You're not losing because you're weak. You're losing because you've become too easy to read. Too visible. Too open. Too honest. Your story, your goals, your plans, they've all been laid bare like an open book. You call it transparency. You think it shows confidence. But to someone else, someone smarter, someone watching closely, it's a map. And that map is leading them straight to your vulnerabilities. Every dream you've spoken, every move you've mentioned, every step you've planned, they now belong to anyone listening. You handed them the manual. You revealed your playbook. You think that makes you brave? But Machiavelli would say that makes you predictable. And predictability is death. Because the moment they know your true intent, your fate is no longer in your hands. It's in theirs. They don't need to fight you. They just need to wait for you to show your next move. And then take the path you prepared for them. This isn't about paranoia. It's about precision. It's about understanding one universal law of power. If they know where you're going, they'll get there before you. If they know what you value, they'll use it to control you. And if they know what you fear, they'll use it to destroy you. That's not theory. That's Machiavellian truth. And the reason you keep losing isn't because you're not smart enough or strong enough. It's because you're too open to play the real game. You think explaining yourself earns respect. You think sharing your plans builds trust. But what you don't realize is, you're equipping others to stop you, to sabotage you, to steal from you and pretend it was theirs all along. And when they do, you won't even know it happened until it's over. You'll be standing there, asking yourself why things didn't work out, while someone else cashes in on everything you bled for. That's the danger of being readable. That's the price of exposing your intent. Machiavelli warned of this centuries ago. Not with a shout, but with a whisper hidden in strategy. If they know your next step, you've already given them the knife. This isn't about lying. It's about withholding. This isn't about being fake. It's about being unreadable. Because in this world, if they can read you, they can redirect you. If they can predict you, they can prevent you. If they can define you, they can defeat you. So ask yourself, how many times have you handed out weapons disguised as truth? How many times have you empowered someone else just by letting them know what you wanted? And how many times did they smile to your face, while positioning themselves to benefit from your downfall? You think you've been honest, but all you've been is vulnerable. And vulnerability in the wrong room is the fastest path to execution. Machiavelli didn't just theorize power, he mastered it. Not with armies, not with threats, but with something far more subtle, the art of hiding intent. His strategy wasn't to fight louder. It was to move quieter, to speak in layers, to cloak truth in performance, to hide steel behind silk. Because Machiavelli understood something that most people never learn, that what people don't know, they fear. And what they fear, they respect. You've been taught to be real, to speak from the heart, to show your cards as proof of integrity. But look at who rules the world. Look at who controls the narrative, shapes perception, builds movements, commands loyalty. It's not the one who's loudest. It's the one who reveals the least. The ones who speak in calculated fragments. The ones who let others talk too much while they listen in silence. The ones who nod just enough to be liked, but never enough to be known. They don't need to convince. They don't need to declare. They don't even need to speak. Because mystery speaks for them. And ambiguity makes them dangerous. But because when you can't read someone, you don't just get confused. You become obsessed. Your mind replays their words. You look for patterns that aren't there. You start second-guessing yourself instead of them. And that's the turning point. When you stop defending your position and start doubting your direction. That's when power shifts. And that's how the Machiavellian wins. Not by force, but by becoming the question you can't answer. Think about it. Why does the quiet one in the room always get the most attention? Why do people lean in when they finally speak? It's not charisma. It's control. They've built tension through restraint. They've made silence a weapon. They've trained the room to respond to their presence, not their voice. This is the kind of power most people will never taste. Because most people are addicted to being understood. You want to explain yourself. You want to be seen, validated, accepted. You want them to know your heart, your dreams, your truth. But every time you give them more of yourself, you give them something to use against you. Let that sink in. The more predictable you are, the easier it is to plan your destruction. They'll know how to push your buttons. They'll know when to smile and when to pull back. They'll know exactly what you want, and then dangle it just out of reach. That's not friendship. That's leverage. And you gave it to them for free. You've been taught to value openness, to post your progress, to let the world know what you're building, to shout your comeback story before it's even written. But here's the Machiavellian law. When you speak your intent, you lose your power, because now they know what to watch. They know when to intercept. They know what to take credit for. So instead of walking the road alone, you walk it while being followed. And before you reach your destination, someone else plants their flag. And you wonder how they got there. You wonder how your original idea became their triumph. You wonder how your blueprint became their success story. Simple. You told them where you were going. Machiavelli would never do that. He'd move in silence. He'd disappear when others expected him to show up. He'd let them believe he was stuck, and then strike from a position they didn't think he could reach. This is the art of stealth power. This is the foundation of control. Never let them know what you're really after. Here's what they don't tell you. You don't need to lie to mislead. You don't need to deceive to manipulate. All you need is to stay quiet, to let others make assumptions, and then let those assumptions steer them off the cliff. That's misdirection. Not as a trick, but as a principle. It's not about confusing them with noise. It's about letting their imagination create the wrong conclusion. You don't say, "I'm doing it tomorrow." You say, "We'll see." You don't say, "I've got everything handled." You say, "It's under review." You don't confirm. You don't deny. You don't explain. You just hold the tension long enough that they start explaining themselves to you. And that's when you win. Machiavellian strategy is not aggressive. It's surgical. It doesn't come in yelling. It arrives in silence. But because silence builds fear faster than speech ever could. Silence makes people fill in blanks. And when they do, they overreach. They expose themselves. They show their hand. All while you're just watching, listening, waiting. And when the moment is right, you don't announce your move. You just make it. And by the time they realize what's happening, you've already won. Look closely at the most effective people in history. The feared generals, the silent CEOs, the political masterminds. They all share one trait, restraint. They don't overshare. They don't broadcast. They don't seek validation. They let others assume they're idle, unmotivated, or unsure. And they use that misjudgment as camouflage. Because being underestimated is one of the most potent weapons in power. When people think you're weak, they stop watching you. And when they stop watching, you get to build freely, silently, strategically. And then, when your creation is complete, when your structure is fortified, when your leverage is set, then and only then do you show your hand. And it's too late. They can't stop what's already done. That's how power works. Not by asking for permission, but by arriving uninvited, fully formed, and immovable. Here's the mistake most people make. They think visibility equals strength. That if people see your journey, they'll respect the hustle. But Machiavelli would say, the more they see of your journey, the more they learn how to stop you from reaching the destination. Every update you post, every move you reveal, it's not building admiration, it's providing a roadmap for sabotage. Someone somewhere is watching, not to support you, not to cheer you on, but to mirror you, to beat you to your own finish line, to do what you're doing and claim it as theirs. And you gave them the instructions. You handed them the formula. You sacrificed your advantage for applause. But applause is cheap. Leverage is priceless. Machiavellians don't share the blueprint. They build in silence. And by the time the gates open, the castle is already built, the guards are already posted, and the moat is already filled. There's nothing to argue with. Nothing to challenge. Only results. And that's the only thing they ever needed to see. Silence isn't the absence of speech. It's the presence of control. You think the one who dominates the conversation holds the power? Machiavelli would laugh. Because real power doesn't need to dominate. It guides. Subtly. Invisibly. The strongest person in the room is never the loudest. It's the one who speaks the least and listens the most. But not passively. The Machiavellian listens with purpose. He listens like a hunter stalks his prey, not to connect, but to collect. Not to share, but to sharpen. He listens for weakness. He listens for fear. He listens for contradiction, for envy, for subtle signals of instability. And when the target begins to open up, when they start revealing more than they should, he doesn't interrupt. He lets them keep going. Because people crave to be heard. They crave validation. And in that craving, they give everything away. Here's the secret. Most people will tell you everything you need to defeat them. If you simply remain silent long enough. You don't need to challenge them. You don't need to correct them. You don't even need to disagree. Just ask one simple question. Then watch. Why do you think that is? What made you trust them? Are you sure that's the right move? These aren't questions. They're landmines. Psychological traps. Because now the other person has to justify their beliefs. They have to convince you of their decisions. And in doing so, they reveal their insecurities, their doubts, their weaknesses. All while you say, nothing. That's how Machiavellians win. They never beg for power. They let others surrender it. One insecure explanation at a time. This is the game they play. Let the opponent keep talking. Let them fill every silence. Let them feel in control. Then, at the perfect moment, say one thing. Not loud. Not long. Just sharp. And watch the temperature in the room shift. Watch their body language change. Watch their tone drop. Because in that one moment, you reminded them, I'm letting you talk, because I've already figured you out. You didn't dominate the conversation. You punctured it. And that one puncture? That's what they'll remember. Not the hours they spoke, but the second they felt exposed. Controlled ambiguity is psychological intimidation. Because when people can't define you, they can't predict you. And what can't be predicted, can't be planned against. It freezes enemies. It attracts loyalty. It commands authority. You become the variable they can't calculate. The question they can't answer. The presence they can't ignore. You don't have to prove you're a threat. You just have to make them feel unsure. And silence does that better than any speech ever could. At some point, silence stops being a tactic and becomes your signature. You're no longer just quiet. You're no longer just reserved. You've become unreadable. And that, in the Machiavellian playbook, is the final transformation. You're not feared because of what you said. You're feared because of what you refuse to say. And when your reputation becomes silence itself, when your name is attached to questions, not answers, you've achieved something most men chase their whole lives and never earn. Influence without exposure. Power without presence. Fear without force. Because now, when you walk into the room, they don't know if you're a friend or foe. They don't know if you're here to collaborate or eliminate. They don't know what you're building, what you're hiding, what you're waiting for. They don't know anything. And that makes you everything. When you reach this level of ambiguity, you don't need to act. You don't need to push. You don't even need to plan. The world adjusts around you. People speak differently when you're silent. They explain more. They apologize more. They start calculating their every word. Not because you said something, but because you didn't. This is the deepest kind of psychological leverage. The kind that can't be bought. Only built, one moment of restraint at a time. You've become the phantom in the room. The one they all factor into their decisions, without ever having heard your thoughts. And when you do speak, it's not conversation, it's command. Because by that point, your silence has built so much pressure that even your softest words feel like strategy. Think about the most mysterious leaders, artists, thinkers. The ones whose names echo through time. What do they all have in common? Mystery. Not because they were hiding, but because they never needed to be seen. They let the world speak for them. They let results become their biography. They let legends grow from what wasn't said. And that's how power works. The less you say, the more they project. The less you explain, the more they fear they've misread you. Because when people can't define you, they don't challenge you. They don't criticize you. They obsess over you. You don't need to prove you're strategic. Just be silent long enough for them to imagine it. And imagination, when fueled by uncertainty, creates a kind of reverence that fear alone can't achieve. Let the loud ones compete. Let them declare and argue and validate and beg for attention. They're busy trying to win the room. You're busy controlling it. Quietly. From the shadows. Because the one they fear the most isn't the man who speaks often. It's the one they never saw coming. The one who never asked for the spotlight, but still ended up holding the stage. That's not charisma. That's mystique. That's Machiavellian presence. It's not built on applause. It's built on absence. The kind of absence that echoes louder than words. At the highest level of power, you don't even need to be present to control the room. You've disappeared, and yet they still feel you. They still consider you. They still whisper about your next move like it's a storm approaching from the distance. This is the final form of Machiavellian strategy. Presence without visibility. Influence without noise. Control without confrontation. Because now you've shifted from being a person to being a force. A variable in their calculations. A ghost they can't ignore. You don't post your work. You don't update your progress. You don't announce your moves. You vanish. And in your absence, the silence begins to echo. People fill that silence with paranoia. They remember the last thing you said, and wonder if it meant more than they thought. They revisit old conversations, reevaluate every facial expression, search for signs they missed. You haven't done anything, and yet you've done everything. That's not luck. That's dominance. That's the power of withholding. You want to make someone fear you without ever raising your voice? Withdraw. No warning. No message. Just space. Let them wonder what they did. Let them crave the validation you once gave so freely. Let them reach for clarity and receive only silence. Because that silence? It's no longer empty. It's loaded. Loaded with implications. With judgment. With consequence. And now they don't fear what you said. They fear what you didn't. You've become rare. And in a world obsessed with overexposure, rarity is power. They only value what they no longer have easy access to. They only chase what doesn't need to be chased. They only respect what can't be fully explained. That's you now. You don't show up to argue. You don't defend your image. You don't clarify rumors. You just disappear. And let your absence multiply your value. They don't even know if you're planning something, or if your silence is the plan. And that's the genius. You've become the uncertainty they can't prepare for. Machiavelli understood this to his core. He didn't need crowds. He didn't need approval. He cloaked himself in contradiction, kind in one moment, brutal the next. Available one day, invisible the next. He wasn't loved. He wasn't even understood. But he was feared, because no one could ever quite figure him out. And in that space between perception and reality, he ruled. So let them guess. Let them misread you. Let them celebrate your silence as if it means you've stopped, while you're quietly building something they'll never be able to reach. Let them mistake your calm for inaction. Let them assume your distance is weakness. Let them forget you, dismiss you, overlook you. Because when you reappear, you won't need to explain a thing. The results will speak. The moment will be too big to deny. And all their assumptions will collapse in real time. You don't need revenge. You don't need recognition. You just need to become inevitable. In the end, your legacy isn't made from the things you said. It's made from the silences that echoed louder than your words ever could. You've walked the full path. From visibility to invisibility. From vulnerability to unreadability. From noise to precision. From being explainable to being untouchable. And now you're no longer just a player. You're the variable every other player fears. You're no longer chasing power. You've become it. Quietly. Brutally. Completely. Psst. Is Machiavelli's final secret. Hide your intent. And let that silence be the one thing they never saw coming. You've learned to speak less. You've learned to move quietly. You've mastered the silence that makes others nervous. But the most dangerous move isn't just hiding your intent. It's making them doubt their own. Because once you place uncertainty inside their mind, you don't just confuse them. You start to control them. Here's what the average person never sees. Most people don't break from force. They break from questions. Unanswered questions. Unresolvable doubt. Plant a seed of hesitation, and you can destroy a decision before it's ever made. Say nothing direct. Just enough to fracture their certainty. A look. The pause. A single phrase. Are you sure that's wise? Interesting. I would have thought you'd go another way. That's bold. I hope you've thought it through. That's it. Nothing more. You walk away, and they'll obsess over that silence for days. Second-guessing every step. Replaying every moment. Asking themselves what you meant. Trying to guess what you saw. That they didn't. That's Machiavellian. You didn't attack. You didn't argue. You simply made them unsure. And that was enough to shift the outcome. Confidence is loud, but control is quiet. And the most subtle form of control is internal instability. When someone doubts their own plan, you don't need to sabotage it. They'll do it for you. They'll delay. They'll change course. They'll start asking for reassurance. And by the time they recover, you're already ahead. Because while they were busy questioning their direction, you were moving with full clarity. That's the hidden war. Not power over people. Power over belief. Power over perception. Power over internal narratives. And once you master that, you don't just move silently. You move through people without resistance. Want to know how to take down someone more talented than you? You don't attack their strengths. You attack their confidence in those strengths. It's not you can't do it. Are you sure that'll work again? You got lucky last time, right? You've grown so much. I wonder if that old method still fits you. These aren't insults. They're mirrors. And when people start seeing themselves through distorted reflections, they hesitate. And that hesitation is all you need. Because in strategy, you don't need to outrun the strongest player. You just need to make them look over their shoulder. This is what most people never understand. Real warfare is internal. Make them carry your voice in their head. Make your words linger in their silence. And when they look unsure, when they blink during decisions, when they start second-guessing what once came naturally, you've already won. No declaration. No announcement. No need to lift a finger. Just a well-timed phrase, a measured pause, and a reputation for knowing more than you say. There comes a point where your silence speaks louder than any proclamation. Where your stillness begins to shape rooms before you even enter them. Where the weight of your absence makes more noise than the loudest man's speech. This is the apex of Machiavellian presence. Legend built from mystery. Influence carved from what was never said. People don't remember the speech you gave. They remember that you didn't need to give one. They don't talk about what you posted. They whisper about how you vanished. And when your absence carries meaning, you've crossed over from influence into myth. Because most men are defined by their noise. But the Machiavellian? He's defined by what he withholds. By what he leaves unsaid. By what they never quite figured out about him. You don't need to be online. You don't need to show up every day. You don't need to update the world on your progress. In fact, don't. Let them assume you're stagnant. Let them misread your silence as defeat. Let them get comfortable. Because that's when their guard drops. And when you resurface, not with words, but with results, everything they thought about you burns away in a flash. You don't need to correct them. You don't need to defend your name. You don't need to explain where you were. Your outcomes will be too undeniable to ignore. Too complete to question. Too late to stop. This is not silence as emptiness. It's silence as anticipation. The longer you stay quiet, the more they begin to wonder. The more they wonder, the more they talk. The more they talk, the more they expose themselves, trying to predict what you're doing, trying to position around a ghost. And in that chaos, you are calm. You are calculating. You are watching. And when the moment is right, you emerge like a storm they never saw coming. You're no longer just a man. You're a signal, a variable, an omen. Your silence becomes folklore. The way you speak becomes a pattern they try to decode. Your reputation becomes a shadow they can't shake. They ask themselves, why hasn't he responded? What's he planning? Is this a test? A warning? A goodbye? And they don't know. That's the power. They don't know. Want to make your presence immortal? Stop trying to be understood. Start becoming unforgettable. Because people don't chase what's available. They chase what's rare. They worship what's untouchable. They talk about what they can't explain. You don't need the spotlight. You don't need the microphone. You just need to make them feel your absence so deeply, so disturbingly, that your silence becomes the loudest voice in the room. There's a deeper power than influence. Deeper than fear. Deeper than respect. It's this. The ability to control a room without being in it. To be so unreadable, so calculating, so quietly dangerous, that people adjust themselves in your absence. They check their tone. They censor their words. They revise their decisions. Because, what if you found out? What if you're still watching? What if your silence isn't silence at all? That's not paranoia. That's your power, now installed inside their psychology. They think you've left, but your voice is still in their head. They move differently now. Not because you told them to, but because they don't want to find out what you'll do if they don't. That's control. Not shouted. Not commanded. Imprinted. This is where the Machiavellian becomes untouchable. You've gone from a player to a phantom. A force that no one can strike, because you've already dissolved into strategy. You don't show your face. You don't need to. They don't even know if you're watching. But they act like you are. Every decision, every hesitation, every whispered conversation is now shaped by what you might do. And you? You do nothing. You simply remain silent. Present only as a possibility. That possibility is more powerful than any presence. You don't need to be visible to be feared. You don't need to act to dominate. You don't need to be there to be the reason people feel pressure. They change the way they speak when your name comes up. They pause before they speak in meetings you don't attend. They check their motives against the thought of your disapproval. Even if you never say a word. That's not intimidation. That's architecture. You've built yourself into the walls. Into the rules. Into the subconscious rhythms of the entire game. And no one even knows how you did it. Only that it's working. And now, you've achieved what every manipulator, tactician, and strategist dreams of. Power that cannot be traced. You've transcended reaction. You've transcended explanation. You don't play the game anymore. You design it. You enforce it. And if someone steps out of line, you don't punish them. You let their fear do it for you.